I want to give these parents an understanding, and hopefully eventually their sons, examples of kind of different personas that players have when dealing with financial advisors. When I say persona, here's what I mean. One persona is the athlete who says, I want somebody to have full control over my stuff. I want you to put me on such a stringent budget that I have to call you on the phone and say, can you put $100 in my account so I can buy a pair of shoes? That's like the most extreme. You have no access to your money. The other extreme is essentially the opposite. They may have people that they're talking to. They don't listen to them. They may have a wealth advisor and it's like, it's my money. I'm doing with it what I want. There's obviously something in the middle that is the most ideal, right?
I'm not trying to get these guys to live in fear and play in fear of when's my career going to end and like this is all I'm going to have left. Like there is something to spending that money on things that you enjoy and taking care of your family. And I love all the stories about guys paying off their parents' mortgages and stuff like that. There is the beauty in that. And that's what they really ultimately a lot of times strive for. And that's what they want. So it's not here to say like live in this level of fear.
Right.
But like they're thrusted in their highest earning years are just so much earlier in their life than most people. Those who don't understand it, pay it. Those that do, profit off of it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Most Valuable Agent Podcast.
Yeah.
I'm joined today by a friend, someone who I've come to know for, it's been a long time.
Almost 20.
So I want to give a shout out first. We're in Orlando, Florida. We're at the winter meetings. So both of us are here obviously doing business. From my perspective, just to give everybody a sense of what I'm doing, meeting with various major league organizations, various scouting directors, also meeting with wealth advisors, and then different professionals throughout the industry. You are here, not only, gracing us with your presence on the podcast, but you're also doing business as well. This conversation is going to be kind of all things money related. And as I think most parents, when they first hear money or hear, financial advisors, wealth advisors, I think the first reaction, if I had to assume, is they oftentimes think about, whether it's the stories on ESPN, the 30 for 30, like, oh, I want to make sure that my son, if he's blessed enough to become a professional, or even go to college and secure a pretty good NIL package, that he has somebody in his corner that he can trust, that he can rely on, who's ultimately going to have his best interest at heart. So we're going to talk a lot about, from the player's standpoint, what are the things that they need to be mindful of, be aware of, whether it's selecting a wealth advisor, but also like what are the responsibilities and duties of that individual. But I think it's only appropriate that we first start because a lot of this is devoted to the parents. Unfortunately, I feel like as parents, what we need to be doing is really asking ourselves, as we're spending money on travel baseball and youth sports, are we doing it with this unintentional expectation that they are going to provide a return for the investment rather than doing it just to support their son? And so as I kind of pose this to you, I mean, you're somebody who, and I do want to kind of talk about your background also, which we'll get into. You've been around the game for a very long time, right? Before you were a wealth advisor, you worked at Marucci Back Company. Really from the ground up. Were you employee number one? I feel like you were.
No, I mean, there was a couple guys that were there prior to me. So saying I was employee number one would be a lie.
Disingenuous.
Yeah. But I'm 18 years old. I mean, in my life, it was really the only job I had prior to this. And so from the backyard to, taking it to where it almost is now, I mean, it was a hell of a journey and I couldn't have asked for a better opportunity.
So talk a little bit about your role there, because I do think it kind of blends perfectly into why you're so successful doing what you're doing today. So starting at the ground floor with Marucci, I mean, you were really in charge of, interacting with the major league players on a daily basis, handling their bat orders, negotiating their contracts. So from like a marketing perspective, you worked for a company really securing those deals, with these players. Talk about that experience and more importantly, like what did that education provide to you with what you're doing today?
I could go for hours in that, but if I were to really try to like get more specific for you, it was a small business that started in the backyard that has been sold twice. So that journey, just from a business standpoint of like the small business growing pains to the highs, the lows, the evaluation from different groups that want to come in and purchase the company, and trying to understand how you navigate those waters. I mean, from the pure business standpoint, like I'm not sure like a 4-year degree would have given me the experience that I got there. But more specific to my role there, it was really centered around their equipment and the goal, the objective of sports marketing is to get the logo seen on TV to influence the younger kids that want to go buy those products. And so I watch sports a little bit differently than most people. Some people watching the game, I'm counting logos, whether it be outfield fence signs or the logo on batting gloves. But you're working with some of the best in the world, and that equipment to them is so deeper psychologically to them than it is a performance based. Don't get me wrong, but that's where I had the connection to the athletes. And so the guys, especially the bats, more than probably other products, like it is such a incredible tool to their success. And you have all these different types of superstitions. Some guys want to change all the time. Some guys never change. But that tool in their hand is so important to their success that they actually invest a lot of time, and they wanted to have a relationship with that person that they knew could deliver, in a timely manner or rush something that needed to be rushed, but more importantly, the consistency in that product. And so it just happened by chance, and we get this guy would tell this guy, and next thing you know, he shares my number, and we start building a relationship through there. And sometimes it was late at nights or early mornings. There's no real Monday to Friday schedule. These guys play Saturday, Sunday, travel days, you name it. So just being there and being available and really kind of getting inside the mind almost psychologically with those guys to see what that product actually meant to them. I took it upon myself to understand and whether they were right or wrong and what they were asking for. It didn't matter. It was trying to get within the 4 inches between their ears to get them comfortable and make them perform. And so there's that. And then just being that close to such great performance, working with some of the best players to have ever played the game and see
Hall of Famers.
Yeah. See how they prepare and see how, everything mattered to them. And the lengths that they would go to just get that extra 1% was very captivating to sit back and watch.
Well, and because we've known each other for so long, I've obviously been down to the bat factory. I've been down and I've seen kind of the inner workings behind the scenes of what it takes when you make a piece of wood to get it from the point where it's being cut to now in their hands. I wasn't expecting to go into this, but I feel like for the viewer who probably has no idea what that looks like, they think, I want to order a dozen of these bats, I'll have them tomorrow. Can you talk a little bit about what that process is like? Because I do, when you talk about, again, trying to be valuable to people, I do think it would benefit them just truly understanding what goes into that. Because it would give them such a different appreciation for those individuals behind the scenes and how much heavy lifting that requires.
I was fortunate to be the front end to deal with the athlete, but it took an army of people, behind me to pull it off. But I mean, whether there's 15 sets of hands touched each and every bat that went there, I think, I don't want to speak specifically to the numbers because they may have changed, but such a very small percentage actually made it of the raw material made it to a Major League Baseball field. So therein lies that discipline and the things that you believe in and what makes a quality product. We're not Superman. We don't have X-ray vision to look at a piece of wood and kind of see what's inside of it. So, but there's things that we evolved over time that we would look for to say what's good versus bad. And it was a very, very small percentage of the raw material that made it to the best players in the game. And so just being disciplined with that. And sometimes it took longer lead times, and sometimes it led to some difficult conversations, but we had a core principles that we believed in and we stuck to it. You're building that trust with the player. That's why they want the product, the brand, the service. But from a raw piece of material, it's got to be selected, graded, spun into the shape that they want. I mean, I think by the time I had left, there was 1,500 models, maybe even way more than that. They're constantly tweaking and making adjustments to their profile. Then they're hand sanded, hand painted, engraved, decaled, then back out to the shop to be, hit weight and finish the ends and the dry time and the right chemicals that go into making the hardest finish and always testing to try to get better. Then you're vacuum sealing them up and shipping them. So it was a multiple day process, which sometimes would lead to, you're trying to get something out to a guy that's in a slump that wants to make a change. Sometimes that would create some strains, but you always did it and you always communicated because you knew how important that tool. But to your point of that, you came down and saw it. Anytime we could get a guy on campus to see that, it was like a light bulb went off, right? Mm-hmm. We automatically connected on a deeper level. They had a better understanding of what it took. And then allowed more opportunity to be more honest with them and like, hey, this is what it's going to take to get it done. So
it's funny, man. We're all consumers, right, in the world. And I think the thought that comes to me is like, it's no different than like as we eat food, right? We go to a restaurant, we have a piece of steak, and we think like, like it's just everywhere. It's like, no. That actually came from something.
Yeah.
And like the process of getting it here to the table wasn't overnight, right? There's all this lead time. But you know, the thought that comes to mind is like level of care. So at Marucci, you certainly, and I could speak to this, you had a level of care where you truly were invested in, when I deliver a product to you, I want to make sure that it is up to your standard, it is up to your liking. And so naturally, for you to do that, you have to have a very, very high standard for yourself, right? When you are responsible, because I use that word, I don't take it lightly, but when you're responsible for your work product, right? When a player of any magnitude gives you an opportunity to work on their behalf, it is a big responsibility, right? That player who's uneducated as far as bat making goes, as far as managing money goes, as far as negotiating contracts goes, or guiding a player's career, they're completely uneducated. They don't know what it entails. And so based on your advice and your expertise, they're making decisions, right?
Important decisions.
Right. When you have now transitioned over to the wealth advisor side, how was the education that you received, not only just at Marucci, but just more about like the daily interaction with really, really high-end professional athletes? How has that kind of crafted your experience, but also your strategy with what you need to deliver? Not only what you need to deliver, but like what these players deserve.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Like what they deserve, because they truly do live different lives than the average Americans walking the street, right? So, you know, my past career brought me inside the inner circle of a lot of Hall of Fame type of players, and to see how they function, how they tick, who else is inside that inner circle, why are they in that inner circle, and more importantly, how many times they're approached from outside the circle, and there's a lot of bad actors out there. So proximity for me was really big, just to kind of see and learn. And be face to face with some serious situations, and that even led to, you know, investments inside of the company that I was at before. So, you know, being in that inner circle, seeing how these guys live, function, the different sets of problems that they have. That, you know, like walking the streets with a buddy to go eat lunch, and like how many times they get approached by fans and stuff like that, and so many people want to be famous, but there's a downside to that. Right. There's, you know, you're at a restaurant, you're constantly being bothered. Like, who doesn't want to be a famous athlete in the city? But there is a side of that like most people don't see. And so I was given access to a lot of those situations and see, you know, kind of maybe the downside of it. What really transitioned is like the discipline, right? And in investing, we really believe in a disciplined approach and having a plan and sticking to the plan. And all these guys that are the one percenters and the best travel ball players, soon to be college players and professional players, like, you're disciplined, right? We always tell them that we early educate them is like, it takes discipline, but you're already a disciplined person because you're eating right. You're getting up early. You're working out. You're taking extra swings with dad at night, right? So you already have this DNA that you need to be successful in investing. And the game of baseball really teaches that, right? How to be humble, how to be disciplined, how to work hard, you know, how to evaluate yourself versus other people. How do you find that value, right? So these guys that we eventually get to and where we're at and the type of clients that you and I both work with, they already have like that essence and that DNA of the discipline approach. And so we really try to double down on that and then spin it into the education side of things, right? Because education is important. If I can educate you on what we're doing, like, then I'm not selling you. I'm on the same side of the table as you, because money can be intimidating. From an education standpoint, if you know what you're looking for, it's so much easier for me to show you the value that we provide to our clients.
Yeah. So you talk about education. And I think what's interesting is, and we talked about this before, you know, we all go to school, right? And our education either delivers or it doesn't. And there are ways that it does.
Yes.
But I feel like the school system today, on a really high level, from a standpoint of like, you know, general business knowledge, has failed us.
Yes.
Right. It's more important that you understand how to do a certain, you know, math equation that you'll never use for the rest of your life, instead of truly understanding how to like manage a checkbook, as an example. Right. Even though a lot of people don't even have checkbooks anymore.
Right.
But so if and you actually brought up one other thing too, like the discipline. I feel like the game of baseball, it prepares these players so well with a lot of different things. But a natural byproduct of kind of being trained to think about things a certain way, when it comes to money with professional athletes, there's actually a flip side to it, right?
Yes.
You have these professional athletes that are very, very competitive, right? They know that with discipline, determination, work ethic, all these things, I'm going to climb the mountain and I'm going to accomplish the thing. And the best of the best, the ones that we work with, they've actually done that exact thing multiple times throughout their career, whether that was in travel baseball, the draft, minor league baseball, the big leagues. They just continue to do it. And so these guys get to the big leagues, or maybe they sign for a really good bonus out of the draft, and they are now kind of like created to think about things a certain way. And now they have all this money and there's a problem that happens. And let's just say somebody approaches them and says, I have the greatest business deal in the world, right? If you loan me $100,000, I'm going to give you back the money in 3 months with, this much of a return and whatever. And to the athlete, yeah, of course, I can do that, right? It's not based on the facts in that moment. It's more based on their emotion saying,
correct,
I've overcome things before. This sounds like a challenge. With my involvement, we can overcome this together. Yeah. But now they're entering a world that they're completely uneducated in, right? And again, this is why it is so important to be educated, to be guided, but also to have people in your corner that are looking out for you. Because if somebody approaches you with a business opportunity, you're not just saying, oh, it sounds like a great idea, right? I can't remember what the podcast was recently, but somebody said, like, it's funny enough, it was a clip from Steve Jobs. He was talking about when he left Apple, why it eventually failed before he came back. And one of the things he said is 99% of companies that fail didn't fail because it was a bad idea, right? The idea was brilliant, but the execution was terrible. And so the idea oftentimes is the thing that the player wants to hang his hat on. It's correct. A great idea. It's $1 billion idea. Nothing becomes $1 billion company based on an idea alone, right? It's all about the execution. So how, as a wealth advisor, are you managing that with them? Because you got to tread lightly a little bit, right?
Oh, 100%. I don't say they're targeted. It's like this nefarious thing, but like their salaries are posted on social media and on the internet.
That's common knowledge,
right? I mean, so one, I always try to use an example with like a 2-year, $20 million deal. And it's like, how much money does this guy have? Let's back out taxes. Let's kind of go through here. There's all these different things, but like to really truly understand from there, you got an idea what you're working with, what things do they want to buy, what big expenses are coming down the pipeline. And then from there, some retirement, you start looking at, a lot of times the public markets are going to offer a lot more transparency and liquidity, which are very, very important to the odd lives that these guys live and when they need their cash flow needs. But they do get approached a lot from a private sector and ideas, and they float around the clubhouse, and there's oftentimes peer pressure from teammates like, hey, my buddy's getting in on this. Like, I don't want to be late to the party, right? Here's my chance to get in. And for the most part, some of the worst business ideas I've seen have come from a player inside the clubhouse. But when you build that trust, we don't want them to hide behind us, but we do offer this kind of like buffer to where, like, if there is a situation where you're getting pitched a business idea, and I'm not here to shut down every single one, but there is a level of due diligence that has to happen to where if we're going to allocate your money and take it out of the public markets into this private company, and there's upside there, but you're also potentially tying money up for long periods of time. And 90% of private businesses go or fail within the first couple of years. And so there's risk involved in anything from finance, but just to sit there and talk to a buddy about an idea or a teammate about an idea and feel that peer pressure, maybe from a veteran that wants to, try to influence a guy to get more involved. Like, there's a level of due diligence that has to happen before you make an idea into your actual money.
Mm.
And speaking more to the private side, like, look at the TV rights deals in professional sports right now. It's really the only thing that's getting people to live TVs. The TV rights deals are going up and up and up. The salaries are going up and up. I know there's a big one coming in baseball next offseason of what that looks like moving forward. But like, they're not only are their salaries going up, so they have money to invest in businesses, but they also have star power that allows them to get in on the private side of things that creates opportunity, but it also adds liability. Private companies that say, hey, we want to get Matt Hannaford invested in our business so we can put in the press release that Matt Hannaford's an investor in our business. He may have only $5,000 in it, but it's a name that they can put in the press release. Well, Matt now has liability to where if the CEO goes and does something nefarious and it, becomes a bad article, bad news media out there, well, Matt's invested in this too. And so there's opportunities there to get these guys in on opportunities that the average Americans walking the street don't get, but there's also some extra liability there. So we play a lot in that space too, because there's great opportunity. Not all these ideas are bad. Execution is really kind of where we dive into like the due diligence side of things. It's like, man, what is this company really going to be? If it's tying your money up 5 years, 10 years, whatever the fund or opportunity looks like. And then here's what we'll think it'll do in like the boring stuff in the public markets that like is not as sexy, but like is kind of proven. It has a very long track record way past the Great Depression, right? So that's where the education comes in. The school system is like, it's training you to learn to like evaluate you of like kind of how smart you are, right? Are they really teaching you the things that you need to be successful? And personal wealth management is something that's just missed, right? And then now you're taking these kids that are getting NIL, they're getting real money really fast with tax consequences and all these different things that go into, that can really impact their future. It's an unbelievable head start for most kids their age, but it can be mismanaged very, very easily. And a lot of times you see like they don't really know how far that money can go. They don't know what they can really buy with it. That brings in the credit conversation of like, yeah, a guy gets a very nice NIL deal. He wants to go buy a car, but he's got no credit. He's got a ton of cash, but like he goes to buy it. And you look at the loan and it's like, this is terrible, bro. I can't let you do this. Like, let's hold tight. Let's build a little bit of credit and like, let's save some money. Like a car is never going to be like a good investment that you flip and make money on. Maybe there's a few situations, but like, yeah, you deserve a car, right? You deserve to drive something nice, but like, let's buy it on some really good terms and let's maybe wait a couple of months to like get you in a better position to where you're not just kind of lighting money on fire at times because you want to drive the sexiest car. And so those are, important conversations. They're also difficult conversations because you are talking to them in this moment of like, they're the best player and they're getting heavily recruited and their agents leverage them NIL deals at all these different opportunities. And so, it's not like facing their mortality, but it's like facing like, what if something goes wrong? What if you don't end up becoming this guy? So like, let's try to curb some of those habits and those expenses. And that's really where the education comes from. It's like, trying to get them to understand what that money can become from an investing standpoint will hopefully, tailor some of the spending habits and then really get them to focus like on a budget and have a plan, because that's kind of what you do when you train, right? I mean, you have like your workout, how many hours you're going to spend in the cage and the drills that you work on. Like, let's have the same type of plan with our finances.
Yeah. And they don't ever want to admit to you they don't understand.
Intimidation.
Right.
It's very intimidating.
And
that's okay.
It is okay. And that's my point. And this is why I want to make sure that this conversation, and the reason why I was excited to have it with you, is we want to give them tools. And the first tool I think that we can give them is the acknowledgement that you're not supposed to be an expert in this.
Exactly. That's what I tell them, back to the high school deal, not to go too long-winded on that, but like I went to a blue ribbon high school. Like they didn't teach me this stuff whenever I was your age. So like you shouldn't know all this, right? So it's okay to admit and like let your guard down. I'm here to help you. I have a fiduciary responsibility to help you. Like, let me first educate you and like, let's let our guard down. And like, I'm inside the circle, man. Like I'm here to protect your money. I'm here to help you. Right. So let me educate you on how this works. And it is very intimidating. And you are talking to, guys that make more money than me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
At like a really, really young age. And so there is like this level of, I don't want to say bulletproof to it, but like there's this level of confidence that comes with it. But it's okay to like just take 15, 20, 30 minutes just to like have a real conversation with like, here's what the contract says. Here's what the cash flows look like. Here's the things that we want to buy. Here's what investment opportunities can look like. Here's what we need to save for in case things go wrong. Here's what we need to save for, 3-month expenses and things like that. What our cash need. Like it's very complex. It's very intimidating. But if, again, going back to what I said earlier, like if you give me the time to let me educate you on how this works, like we won't have to have these all the time because you'll have a better understanding. These meetings will move a lot quicker. And if you know what I'm doing for you, then I feel very, very confident in what I'm doing. And we're going to stay in touch and making sure we're staying to the plan. But it's okay to admit, using the car example, it's like, dude, I'm not like that much. I'm not smarter than you. I'm not here to be the smartest guy in the room. I've just bought more cars than you've bought. I've bought more homes than you've bought. I've been through the financing options and things like that. So like, let me just help you. And then along the way, let me just use this as like a purchase like this to like educate you on being on the wrong side of this, this interest, right? I mean, like, so again, back to the credit, like you want to buy a car and you may have a ton of cash, but like, every $1,000 you put down is going to affect your payment like $20 a month. Like, let's hold on to the cash, right? So what is really credit? Is what's more important, credit versus cash? And so, you see guys who go out and buy things because they have cash, but they're getting a horrible lease option or a horrible, financing option on it. And it's like, let's get on the other side of that and have the money that you have at an age that most kids your age do not have.
Right.
And if you get that money working for you, now you're on the opposite side of this side of the coin, and compounding interest and all these other terms that you kind of can get into deeper. But it's really trying to get them to understand what that money really is, how that money really works. And if you just hop in and you have this influx of cash and you're like, I'm going to buy the sickest car out there, like more than likely you're not going to get a good, if you go and buy yourself in the dealership and you don't consult with somebody, like they're waiting for you to walk in.
Well, when players don't consult with someone, most of the time it's because I don't want to look stupid. So it's easier. Let me just go in, let me just do the deal, and then no one's going to tell me that I don't know what I'm doing.
And I'm right? Because
the dealership is certainly not telling you.
Yeah. And I'm driving a sick car.
Right.
It's like, you deserve the car. I'm not here to tell you drive a hoopty, go buy a used car.
Yeah.
I'm not here to be so pragmatic and save every single dollar, but there are smart ways to buy things.
Well, so everybody hears these stories like, Antoine Walker's an example, and not to get into specifics, but, he didn't make one decision that lost him, hundreds of millions of dollars, right? It was a slow bleed.
Death by a million cuts.
That's right. So that's why when we talk about budgeting, like that's one of the tools that everybody kind of needs to be educated on. And from a wealth advisor perspective, that undoubtedly needs to be something that is a focus.
Well, hang on. Let me stop you right there.
Sure.
I'm a wealth advisor. I have to have somebody do my budget for me.
Right.
Right. Like, cause it takes this like outside level of like discipline to like, if you just look at your account and you're just operating off of like what you see, like you don't really have a plan, like, well, then you're a lot more, you're going to swipe that card a lot more.
Sure.
So like you need like that outside advice to like kind of try to hold you to it. And it's not like, hey man, like you went over budget, like what's the deal? It's like, no, it's just more like psychological to know in your brain. It'll over time, like it'll add up.
And I want to give really these parents an understanding, and hopefully eventually their sons, examples of kind of different personas that players have when dealing with financial advisors, right? And then I want to get to what we believe to be kind of like the most ideal persona. So when I say persona, here's what I mean. And these are specific examples without naming names of like I've seen with athletes and wealth advisors. One persona is the athlete who says, all right, I want somebody to have full control over my stuff. I want you to put me on such a stringent budget that I have to call you on the phone and say, can you put $100 in my account so I can buy a pair of shoes?
Yeah.
Right. That's like the most extreme. Like you have no access to your money. I am putting it away because I am not going to spend this money. If I sign for $1,000, I'm going to have a decent amount of that $1,000 after taxes obviously left, and I'm not touching it. That's like one extreme. The other extreme is essentially the opposite. Nothing. They may have people that they're talking to. They don't listen to them, right? They may have a wealth advisor and it's like, it's my money. I'm doing with it what I want. You can tell me I should or shouldn't do it. I appreciate your insight, but it's not going to affect what I ultimately do. There's obviously something in the middle that is the most ideal, right? Somebody who acknowledges and recognizes, this is all new to me. I do not know what I'm doing, but I have chosen you to be a guide for me. And so help me understand, if this was your money, knowing what you know, what should I be aware of? What should I be doing? And then let's have conversations about, do we want to invest a little bit more? Do we want to save a little bit more? Do we want to save a little bit less based on various things throughout my career? Because if you're talking to a kid who's 18 years old who just signed for $10 million out of the draft, compared to you're talking to a guy who's 35, who's played in the big leagues for the last 10 years, who's now on his last year, those are two different conversations, right? It's not cookie cutter. An analogy that I've always like appreciated, and it's not a perfect analogy, but the analogy that I was told at one point that I always visualize with athletes is when you're playing professional sports, right? And you're at the highest level. So you're in the big leagues and now you're making the millions of dollars that every player dreams about. Visualize you're in a bathtub, or like you're filling up a bathtub. The drain is closed and all of the water is filling up the bathtub. That is your playing career. You are making so much money and you just feel like, I can't even spend this money. It's crazy, right? And again, referencing the Antoine Walker thing, I think on some level he probably felt like, I'll never lose it because it's so much.
It's never going to stop coming
that
in.
It doesn't
like this.
matter if I'm, flying privately every single flight, even if it's I could go to Southwest and get a $100 ticket, or I could fly privately for 15 grand. I'm going to fly privately for 15 grand. What starts to happen though is that player's career ends. The water turns off. Now the drain opens. And now it's like, what are we doing with the water that's left in the bathtub? And is it being put to use?
Right.
And so you talked about earlier different things that, athletes could ultimately do. The whole idea that these players need to kind of grasp and understand is you want to be able to understand how to put your money to work for you.
Right.
Because that's what you're doing. You're employing the capital for a specific reason. And it's not just to spend on enjoyment. That's a component, right? And I know a lot of really good financial advisors, part of the conversation is, look, we're going to have what you need for expenses. We're going to have what we need to invest, right? We're going to have the savings component. And then it's like, okay, you guys want to go on vacation. Let's allocate a certain amount of this for you to spend every single year on gifts for Christmas, flying for vacation.
You earn that.
Right.
You deserve that.
Right.
And it's good for your mental health too. Right. Like, I'm not trying to get these guys to live in fear and play in fear of like, when's my career going to end? And like, this is all I'm going to have left. Like, there is something to spending that money on things that you enjoy and taking care of your family. And I love all the stories about guys paying off their parents' mortgages and stuff like that. There is the beauty in that. And that's what they really ultimately a lot of times strive for. And that's what they want. So it's not here to say like, dude, save all your money, live in this level of fear.
Right.
But like, there's a right and wrong way to do a lot of those things. You're right. Like, a lot of these guys are making money that like it's coming in so fast, but it also shuts off faster than most people too. Right. Like when I try to dive into some of the education with the kids, and I show them how this is how, the average NFL player earns or Major League Baseball player earns versus like the average American, like those two curves, income versus age, look way different. Right. Like your spike's way higher than mine will like ever get. But, I started making like, I think started out Marucci like $7.50 an hour, then moved up to $9 an hour. And then I made 11 and then I got on salary and it was like, 30 grand a year. And then, but I learned how to live at like each and one of those stages. Mm-hmm. Right. And like paying rent and used car, and the life got better and, you get married and all this stuff. Right. But like, they're just thrusting these kids in from like living with their parents' house to like being millionaires. And it's like, they have these spending habits because they're thrusted into like their highest earning years are just so much earlier in their life than most people, but it also shuts off too. So it's like, what do you want to do when you're done playing? Because like, look, like 35 years of age, you're done. Right. And if you live that hard for that many years and you get to the end of that career and you have these mortgages and you have these, bigger expenses because you were living like a rock star for so long, but then it shuts off like, and you didn't prepare to have that money reach, 65, 70, 80 years of age. Like, well, then what are you going to do next? And so you got to go get income. You got to go coach. And it's not to say like everyone should just save all their money and then just retire. Like, not everyone wants to retire at 35 years of age, but you're also given this amazing opportunity that if you're smart with it, you get to make the decision what you want to do when you're done playing.
Right.
Some guys want to retire on a ranch. Like, that's awesome. Some guys want to take that money and invest in businesses, right? So if you have an opportunity, you have this cash and you're looking at the end of your career and you say, hey, I want to go do this next. It's way better to do it as like a part owner or have a stake in it as opposed to being an employee for a company. So let's start preparing and like not constantly having these conversations of post-playing career, but that's a hard process for guys. I think it's just not getting caught up in spending off of what the income is today. And like, let's focus on like what the income really looks like over the next 5, 10 years, best case scenarios, worst case scenarios, and then just have a plan for there because no baseball players playing at 55, no football players playing at 40. There's a couple, Brady, a couple other guys, but like you still have half your life left.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you want to set up your family. You want to take care of people in your life. And so that takes planning. And so let's not just get lost in the glitz and glamour of the nice things that we buy, but let's also keep one eye on the future. And sometimes in that moment where you're bulletproof, you're on the cover of magazines, you're the biggest name in a city, you get kind of lost in the bright lights a little bit, and there's a level of enjoyment, but use it to your advantage, right?
Yeah.
Like, have this money make money for you. And when you get guys to really understand that whole compounding interest thing, and Albert Einstein calls it the eighth wonder of the world, right? Those
For
who
a reason.
yeah, like those who don't understand it, pay it. Those that do, profit off of it.
Mhm.
So a lot of these guys have an entrepreneurial mind, so it's like just showing them options, for like, and planning for like 5 years, 10 years down the road. Like, what do you want to do when you're done? A lot of time you talked about guys and they're like, when I'm done, it's like, dude, that's actually closer than you think it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and so they do earn very abnormally to most Americans, and it's an unbelievable head start. And so I guess for me, the hard part is like seeing it being mismanaged, right? And that's where my passion comes from. Like, what gets me out of bed today is like pretending this money is mine and what I would do with it. You don't have to listen to everything that I say, but like, let me just run some scenarios for you. Let me just hypothetically speaking on a couple of things, whether it's like month to month, day to day, year to year, or planning for your life after sports.
I mean, there's various wealth advisors out there.
Yeah.
Right? I think everybody probably knows somebody in the neighborhood who does it. And not that it's just like real estate agents, but I feel like there's so many real estate agents out there, and there's a lot of wealth advisors too. And, because trust is such an important thing, I think sometimes when families have a son who gets drafted and is given some money, because the trust maybe is with someone in the area who doesn't have experience in professional athletes, they say, I'd rather rely on the trust factor. I know I can trust this person, so let's have him manage it. And I'm not saying that is 100% of the time a mistake, right? However, knowing how professional athletes make money is drastically different than a business owner, a doctor, a lawyer, vastly different. The playing window is so small, the percentage likelihood that player is going to eventually grow and become somebody who even gets to arbitration, let alone free agency, is so small that if you are unaware of how that process works, that financial advisor, wealth advisor may be recommending certain products or different things that would have been great for a doctor who's going to work until he's 75 years old, but maybe not so much for the professional athlete who his window of making money is going to be very small.
Yeah. And the same thing kind of goes for, Steven, who you had on the podcast, CPA. I mean, like, there's a ton of great CPAs out there. Do they understand jock tax? Do they understand, some of the things that different lifestyles these guys live? And it's kind of the same thing on the wealth advisory side is like, we don't deal with, doctors and lawyers and people that worked in the plants for many years and stacked all these stock options and they're, planning that come to us at 50 years of age that, hey, what's my retirement situation look like? We deal with sudden net wealth individuals, and we specialize in that because they are totally different. And the cash flows are different. The investment opportunities, there's so many ways I could take it of how it's different, but it is totally different. And so using the guy that represents your mom and dad, it's not that he's not going to do a good job, but is that what's best for the 18-year-old kid? Like, what mom and dad's portfolio look like should not be what the 18-year-old millionaire looks like.
I want to give these people practical and like things that they can really put into practice after hearing this podcast. So if they interview wealth advisors, what are a handful of questions that you would recommend that they ask?
How you organize your fees? Like, what's in it for you? Like anything.
Yeah,
like,
how do you charge?
How are you
making
your
money?
motivation, and then I'll go from there. Like, what motivates you? Why are you doing this? Right. So I mean, you don't have to be that blunt and that forward with it, but like, how are the fees? But then go deeper than that, right? Like, because there's some putting the ping pong ball under the solo cup and moving it around. Like, there's some firms that'll kind of say, hey, like, our fees are way lower, but they're getting commissioned off of like selling you products.
Can you talk a little bit about like specifically the various ways? Because I know for anybody listening, there are firms, and they've been around for a while, who actually will charge a player a percentage of their playing contract, which is wild to think about. But there are many firms that do that, right? And so to help everybody understand like the impact of that, you're paying obviously your agent a percentage of the contract that he's negotiating, right? To add another percentage point or two for them to manage your money, but not based on what they're doing with your money,
right?
Purely based on your playing contract. Doesn't mean you're giving them more money to use, to invest. If they're paying 5 bills, let's say, and I'm generalizing here, but they're paying 5 bills and you're making $1 million a year. Now you go make $30 million a year and they're still paying those 5 bills. Nothing's changed. Your fees just grew exponentially.
Yeah. When you look at fees over time, and again, this is a very important to like the age and the type of people that we're talking to now, or the sons or, of the people listening, is those fees over time, when you look at what they do, like that half a percentage point over like 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, 40 years is like, could be millions of dollars. So just to sign up for a percentage of what you have, what you're earning that's
Yeah. Well, so let's do this. Let's say we're talking about a player out of the draft. And this player doesn't know anything. They meet with various financial firms. They choose you, right? Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you're working on leading up to the draft? Like, what are you educating them on? What are you really focused on before they actually make any money to kind of get them to a place where when that happens, right, God willing, that they're in a good spot?
Yeah, well, I mean, somebody's going to go that high in the draft. They're more than likely receiving some sort of NIL compensation, right? So let's make sure that we're buttoned up and planned there. We're working with a good CPA that's helping you kind of organize some of those expenses, and where's the threshold on the LLC, and do you pay yourself, and kind of, are we in that same ballpark? What does that look like rolling forward when you get into pro ball, when the team now pays the individual? But back to the NIL side, let's make sure we're organized. We're saving for our taxes as we lead up to the draft year, and let's kind of like financial quarterback this thing. Like, man, here's what we're thinking. Here's multiple different scenarios. Dude, so much goes into like training and traveling and focused and downtime and mental health. And, like, this is a big, cumbersome process that it can be intimidating. So like, let's focus on it before your season starts. So you're not something that you're thinking about consistently in season. But like, now that we get through the college season and we're prepping for the draft and we have a better idea, you've already kind of started interviewing some teams and you got an idea of, where you think you're going to go. Let's start running some scenarios. Let's start seeing what the, backing out all the different expenses, fees, what city, domiciling. You're working with the CPA on that front there to kind of say like, all right, where do we think we're going to be, and what do you want to do with it? And again, I'd love guys to invest all their money, but that's not a realistic expectation. That's not what I'm here to do. That's not what I'm trying to extract out of them, right? It's like, all right, so let's assume you're going to get this. What do you do? What are your thoughts on money? Like, what do you want to buy with it? What do you, and so let's just have like a real honest and open conversation. And I'll my job is to give you advice.
It sounds like we've got a similar job. So one of the very first things that we do, it's like, we have to understand really who you are.
Yeah.
Right.
What are your motives?
Let's figure this out, because, I talked about kind of like the 3 personas, right? If we're dealing with the person one who's all the way over here on the right, who's saying like, I don't want any access to my money. You have not full control, but like, you're the one who's telling me that I can spend $100 on a pair of shoes. It's good to know that, because that player is going to, be much different than the guy on the other side, which is, give me your opinion, but I'm going to do whatever I want.
Right.
Right.
I would say, why pay us?
Right.
You know what I mean?
At that point, like
just keep all your money in your checking account, and that's your philosophy on it.
With this player, right? You've now taken him up until the draft. Now he's blessed and he signs for a, pretty good signing bonus. I know that there's many, many things based on who he is and what his goals are that he could be doing. How much is his salary as a baseball player now? Because again, you got your bonus, which is great.
Right. You got half your bonus.
Right. There you go. After taxes, half. But now you're in pro ball, and these minor league guys don't make a lot of money.
No.
So again, thinking about the standpoint of like, what is your training going to look like in the offseason? Because that's going to cost money, right? How are you kind of managing more the expectation? Because I think a lot of times when the guys sign for a lot of money out of the draft, they think, I'm getting to the big leagues in like 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm going to make big league minimum for a couple years. Then I'm going to get to free or arbitration, then free agency. And in their mind, they're 6 years down the road and they're already making $10, $15 million a year, right? How are you managing that with them to kind of get their sights set on like, well, let's slow down a minute. We've got to get there first. Like we really need to focus on like, how many years ahead are you thinking about?
Usually 3 to 5 at a minimum, right? And so what does kind of like get them to like check up a little bit and like humble them is like, all right, here's going to be your minor league salary next year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, all right, here's the bonus. Great. You earned it. You deserved it. We'll put it over here. But like, this is what you're going to make next year. right? Now, they've done a better job recently of like, housing stipends and, ultimately like a lot of the minor league guys, like they don't make a lot of money, but it's, the cycle that they're on. They don't really spend a lot of money too. I mean, there is some downtime to go to the mall and some things like that, but they're all over and they're in hotels or they're in apartments in one city. They're not really like buying apartments. It's really, we focus a lot on like, what are those big expenses that you want to do? Like, let me show you if you don't touch it, what it'll do. Right. I realize that's not the case, but like, if you have an understanding of like what the top scenario could be, if you don't touch it and you just live off your minor league salary, like here's what it'll do over 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. But, hey, I want to buy this house. I want to buy this real estate. I want to buy this car. Like, all right, let's start backing out some of those things. And like, all right, what are we left with? And so it just comes from trust and it comes from honest conversations. And like you said, kind of getting into, we like to use, we call it the mind map, where we try to like get inside the mind and like, hey, like what scares you about money? What excites you about money? Like, what do you think about money? What do you want to, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do? And all those like just kind of like philosophical, broad questions that have nothing to do with data and analytics and ETFs and all those like terms that you'll learn in the financial world. Like it's really getting to understand what they want to do with it and what they want to buy. And so helping them buy that at the most efficient way possible and save as much as they can to invest. And then typically there's not a lot of married guys in the draft, but like, hey man, like, you're dating this girl, like be around a ring soon. Like you guys are gonna get married. How much do you want to save for the wedding? And then, a little later in their career, it's like, oh, we have a kid. It's like, all right, well, what do those expenses look like moving forward? And then do we want to start establishing a trust to where we protecting some of those assets and how do they receive that money over time? Because I know you want to take care of them. And so the conversations just always evolve over their career. But yeah, man, right out of the draft, back to it. I mean, it's an influx of cash and try to educate and instill some of that discipline, show them all these different alternatives and different directions that we can go. And then from there, listen to them.
Yeah. All right. I want to get into, we've thrown around the term fiduciary a couple times. I know that a lot of families have heard it. Some players may have heard it. But again, when you're talking about the financial piece, I think instead of making, the assumption that everybody just knows or the player or the parent says, oh yeah, I know what that is when they really don't.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Like, can you describe what that is?
It's such a loose term that's being thrown out there now. I think a lot of people are using the term that honestly shouldn't use it. But the way we view it at my practice is, it's an ethical and legal responsibility to put the client's interest above your own, right? And so you could take that a couple of different ways, but that kind of fits back in and circles back to like the unusual life cycle these guys have of earning money. When we are a fee only advisor. Like you pay us one fee to give you the advice that we do. And that'd be a different conversation for a different day of why we believe so wholeheartedly in that. But if you look at some of the other options that are out there and opportunities, a lot of them come reference from family members that may be more suitable, because you'll hear that term a lot too for, so that this is who dad uses, right? There's a lot of, you always kind of have to like question like the motives and what people are trying to get out of it. And, the fiduciary side of things, something we take very serious. It's a legal responsibility. It's an ethical and legal responsibility to put the client's interest ahead of our own. So if we're helping a guy buy an insurance policy for his junior year of high school leading up to his draft year, like we're going to go find him 3 or 4 different options. We literally make nothing.
Right. You don't make any money off of that.
Right.
Not every firm is the same.
No. They're, and you start mixing in like some of the banking institutions and like the banking products that they offer. It's like, oh, well, no one's going to get better finances on your housing loan for the first house that you want to buy. They try to loop a lot of this stuff in there. And then if you go a lot of times look at some of these guys' portfolios, you're like, they're just selling them products. Like, oh yeah, we're charging less fees. And it's like, yeah, but they're making commissions off of like these products that they're putting them in. And it's not that they're all just like bad products, but like, does that fit? Is that the best product for a 19-year-old kid that's got $800,000 invested? Like,
right. So
I don't know.
To make sure that everybody understands. So a firm says, we want to sell you this product. We want to put you in this thing. Mm-hmm. They're making a fee off of it.
Yes.
Right. And so
or like a trip to Cabo if they sell X amount of them. You know what I mean?
Right. So they're giving you advice.
Yeah, they're incentivized differently than I'm incentivized.
Right.
Right. It's questioning like their motives. And again, it's like, it's uncomfortable and it's Interviewing process is important, but like it's hard to just like put a microphone in somebody's face and be like, hey, what are your motives?
I'm
trying to get to my son.
So what's funny is I think parents are great at that. I think part of the problem though is they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
So they ask a question, how do you charge?
Mm-hmm.
They give an answer and the family's like, okay, I think I understand. And then they meet with the next person and they may say something totally different. It may sound the same. And they may say, oh, they charge the same. They just don't understand.
Yeah.
And so naturally they may go with the guy that, oh, lives closer to us, right? He's going to be here more.
Yeah.
I liked his personality more, whatever it is. And so
they worked with them in the past.
Right. So the mistake is made not from not asking the question, not understanding. And this is why I wanted to kind of go more into the specifics as far as like, what do you mean when you say fiduciary?
Yeah, and there's so many different ways you can take like not only the incentive side, but what's available to you, what products are out there. But I think I touched on it a little bit earlier too. Like there is a big private sector option that these young millionaires, athletes who have millions of followers on social media have access to private investments. And I'll be completely honest with you, if a player of mine wants to take money out of the market to invest in something private, well, that's less money for me to manage. But I would do it if I believe that this is a good investment, that in the next 3 to 5 years, he's going to be able to liquidate that investment and bring it back to me.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, it's really just not trying to keep everything that he has because, it affects my pay. It's more of like, no, I want to be with this client for a long time.
Right.
And this company's cutting him in on a deal that most people can't get. And I think this is a good deal. And I think you need to do it. And I'm investing in it too. I'm eating the dog food, right? I think it's something that like, I'm believing in it, even though it's less money for me to manage. That's where I think a lot of other advisors that are out there that are kind of more on like the institution side or the broker dealer side that are kind of selling products, they're a lot more leery to pass on that opportunities because it's less products that they sell and it's less that they have under management. And that's, it's very short-sighted approach because again, the incentives, right? And so that again comes back to the relationship side and the trust and like, dude, I'm not looking to just represent somebody for like 2 to 3 years. Like I'm here to do this for 20, 30, 40 years.
The firm you work with, Lord Murray, you guys are very big in multiple sports, right?
Sports, actors, entertainers, Sutton Net Wealth individuals, YouTubers, Twitch streamers, SpaceX Meta employees that have a ton of stock options. It's Sutton Net Wealth individuals. Okay. Yeah.
I recognize that some of the listeners may be parents of football players, basketball players, etc. Well, for a lot of these NBA guys or NFL guys, they're getting drafted. They're in the league.
Yeah.
Right. Where at baseball, they're making the minor league salary and it's going to take a while. What are some of those, I guess, initial differences?
The cash flows. I think, on the football side, there's a 53-man roster. I forget how many, guys practice squad. I'm going to get that number wrong. Average life cycle in a lot of positions is like 2.8 years. And it is a turnstile of employment. Like 35% of the guys get to a second contract, right? So it's, it is a lot more transactional. I mean, the injury risk is way higher. Pivot to the NBA. What was it, 13 guys on the bench? I mean, LeBron's 40, Steph's nearing 40. They're still playing like Kevin Durant, so those spots don't come as readily available. Now you get a Supermax guy, like that's a whole different ball game. Back to baseball. It's like a very big upfront draft bonus. And then there's this kind of waiting period, that can go so many different directions. I do think the teams have gotten better with calling guys up sooner. They're not really manipulating like some of the stuff that you've seen like with Chris Bryant and stuff like that. I mean, definitely changing incentives.
Yeah, right? The CBA certainly, and a shout out to the union in the last CBA, they did a very good job of getting some additional things put into the CBA that finally protected players in that regard who maybe you referenced Chris Bryant, should have made the team, didn't make the team really because they didn't want his clock to start. And
the pre-arb pool's been big. I mean, you get there and you perform like, all right, there's a way to you to get to it where they used to actually have that control over you. Like, now we're going to manipulate this and we're going to get all 6 years out of you or try to buy out a couple of those years on the discount. And so, it's a little bit faster runway, but still baseball, dude.
Yeah.
The baseball guys, it's unique to other sports. Yeah, they're all athletes. Yeah, they're celebrities. Yeah, marketing deals can be similar. But their earning cash flows are just totally different than a lot of the other sports.
Last thing I have for you, and I'll link this on the podcast, or I'll figure out a way if you guys want to see this to get it to you. There were 2 studies that were done, and I want to say it was right around 2016, and I'll look and see if there's more of a up-to-date and recent study. But based on these 2 studies, essentially what these studies showed was in youth and travel sports, and primarily these studies were about baseball, right? Or one was about baseball. The reality is a lot of families, right, as they're paying for their son playing travel baseball or sports, they're looking at the money that they're spending as an investment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yikes.
And so then naturally, and I don't blame families for thinking this way, it's more of a byproduct of thinking this way. Naturally, as they're paying all of this money and looking at it as an investment, the son is unnecessarily being affected by all of the pressure that comes with that, right? And what the study addresses, one of them was families, a large percentage of them now are no longer putting forward towards their retirement plan because the money is now going to this investment. They're now putting a lot of money on their credit cards, right? I mean, these things are expensive. And what families are doing, knowingly is they're banking on, well, if school's going to cost us $60,000 a year now, potentially, if my son gets a scholarship, well, if I'm not spending $60,000 a year, like it's still going to be worth it. Right. And so they bank on that happening. But in reality, they're in their mind, it's like, not that it's 100% chance this is going to happen, but let's say it's an 80% chance my son's going to get a full ride scholarship. Reality is, say it's closer to 25%. And I feel like that conversation needs to happen a lot more, really for two reasons. One, because I think it's going to alleviate a lot of stress and pressure on the son. But also, I'm hopeful it's going to alleviate a lot of stress and pressure on the parents, because when you could just call out what the thing is that you're dealing with, that right now is living in your head and you're just knowing you're doing it, but not wanting to pay attention to it. That's no different than a player, giving somebody a bunch of money and like needing it back, but just, oh man, I can't ask him for the money back. It's this unnecessary stress that kind of lives in the ether. And I feel like it just creates a lot more problems than.
Well, the reason why the study was done in baseball and probably other sports is baseball's very expensive.
Oh yeah.
It's hard for parents to kind of evaluate their own kids like through that lens. And so not everyone is going to have an agent in their ear to help them guide them through that process. So again, I commend you for having this podcast, because I think it casts a wider net to so many people that do need that advice. Dude, hearing people like are spending their retirement money on that stuff, that as a financial advisor, is like, that's very that kind of eats at me a little bit. I hate that it is the case, but there is this level of exposure that you do have to have, and you can't just sit back and just like, hey, I'm only going to play 2 tournaments over the summer, right?
Here's what I'll say. Just like development leads to exposure, education on the financial side leads to you being able to save money and make smart decisions. Yeah. And so that's what I mean. It's like if a family, thinks about youth sports and just gets so overwhelmed, it's no different than someone who just, comes into a lot of money and is like, I don't know what to do with it. The answer isn't just go spend more. It's slow down, think about it strategically, and ask good questions. And that's where I'm hoping that the podcast is adding value to a lot of these families who otherwise wouldn't get this insight.
Well, it is, dude. And that brings you back to this NIL conversation. And one of the things I think about often is like, and again, that's where a good agent comes in, is like, everyone wants like these marketing deals. They want this NIL deal. And it's like, that's added pressure, right? I mean, like, even if it's like the local burger joint that's paying you, $1,000 for a couple social media posts, like there is in the back of these kids' mind, they may not want to admit it, that like they now have added pressure because like, the local burger joint might not post them if they have a rough weekend. Like, dude, it's understanding where you really fit in this sector and who you want to be and what motivates you to not just get on the hamster wheel and try to keep up with some other kid or have the same path as some other kid, right? If you would play better if you were looser, wouldn't you? Right? If you didn't have that,
absolutely.
Wouldn't your brain focus a little bit faster? Wouldn't you have more bandwidth to analyze what this guy throws and what I think he's going to throw in this situation? Not looking over your shoulder to see like, man, if I don't get a hit off of this guy, like I might end up having to go to a JUCO route versus a D1. Yeah. Like, dude, that's just a horrible mindset to live. And so that's where, back to the financial side of things with these parents, is like it's driven off of fear. And then you have these private equity companies just wringing the towel, just getting all the juice out of that, which is tough. So again, having a podcast like this, or an advisor, or somebody that's a trusted ally that kind of knows the game, that can really kind of shoot you straight, or like how you need to be thinking about this, what schools, what real opportunities are really out there in front of you, is very, very important. I think that would alleviate a lot of the emotional stress, but also financial stress too.
No question. I feel like that's a good way to stop. Right there. Kyle, appreciate you,
Thank
brother.
you, man. I appreciate it. We wanted to do this for a while, man.
Yeah.
Thanks. Glad we did it.